Good. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. Uh, well, we work together on the other side of the world, which makes it a bit more easy because I'm working in the daytime and she works in nighttime, and vice versa. So from each day we make 2 days, and that makes that we can make double work and present such things as today. Uh, Tengku is also a very nice colleague to work with, so we laugh a lot, and we have always good chats on Skype to work on this kind of talent identification research. So we are going to talk about talent identification, about talent development, about biobanding, some new terms in badminton, and first of all, if you look at the research that happened the last years, well, it's always about talent identification and talent development. But we forget something, because there is more than that, and every federation works in the same way. They all work with talented persons. They try to select, and in the meantime, they deselect, and they try to develop them. That's how it works in badminton, in basketball, in gymnastics, in cycling, in every sport we know all around the globe. And the badminton, for example, the talent identification, we believe in the coach's eye. We believe in physical tests, but that's not the only thing. There is more than that. We believe also in talent selection, and we forget that we deselect, so we need other things. The advantage for early maturers in our selection process is a big issue, and when we develop talent, we probably help the players who are more mature, and we help them to be exposed to injuries, and sometimes they lose their motivation. So what we saw in one of our works, papers, is that in gymnastics, for example, we believe that the coaches have the eye to detect the best gymnasts. They think that they will find the next Olympic champions. It's not completely true, because we see that if you use other techniques, and instead of working with a physical test and the eye of the coach, and you work with motor capacities and you try to measure that, well, then you have more relevance and you will probably detect the future champions. We did some research on that, and we detected champions at baseline based on 4 little tests. So in judo, gymnastics, taekwondo, even in cycling, in alpine ski, in volleyball, we found champions. We found 2 world champions who were at baseline, 7 years old, incredibly good in motor coordination tests. So if you see them, if you detect them, then you know that you have gold in your hands and that you can probably develop them. So in a pool of 756 gymnasts that we tested at the baseline 7 years old, we found 1 world champion, and she got really the top 3 score in this pool of 756. What happened with the 2 others? Demotivation, injuries, we don't know it, but we found one that became very good, and we found the same in judo. So if you see a certain profile which is promising, you should do something with it. And that's what we are going to try now with the skills that we are going to show you. So the skipped phase is the talent detection. Instead of starting at baseline with talent identification and put them into badminton, probably it's better to look at them generically, who is a good mover. Because once a good mover, probably you will stay a good mover forever. My grandfather is still living, not my grandfather, was the grandfather of my children is still living, and he's sailing at the moment. He's 90 years old and he sails in a laser boat. I don't know if you know a laser boat. It's very difficult. If you fall out of it, you have to be very strong to get in your boat again. So once a good mover, always a good mover. Talent detection is very important. So we need that underneath our system. And that's what we do in the Netherlands. In the schools, we already try to detect the better movers, and we try to find a way for them and a sport for them. We try to connect them to the sport that best fit with them, with the sports compass, which I will explain later. So detection first, good movers, and therefore we built a tool, and it is to test the motor coordination, the fundamental movement skills. Only 4 little tests helps us to detect them. So if you have got a good balance, that will help you. Even in volleyball, it's possible to have a good backward balance, because you have to move backward to get the ball. If you can't do that, you will have problems. So we found those champions based on this little test. Jumping sideways, very important also in badminton. If you move very fast, then probably you have the fundamental movement skill to become a good badminton player. Another one is very generic. You have to try to move these platforms in a line and go as fast as possible. So this is something which is not according to any sport, but it gives you an idea of a good mover. And also for badminton, very important, is the eye-hand coordination, which we do with the Irene Fabres test, and we try to look at a good motor coordination of those children at baseline when they're 9 years old. We built this application. The school teachers use it on their cell phones, so we don't use papers anymore. It's immediately into the server, and you get immediately response, and you see who is a good mover and who is a bad mover. And then the missing link is, if you know that, how will you try to find the best sport for them? So talent orientation is also very important in the complete ecosystem that we build. So schools, municipalities, clubs are all working together. It's very difficult to connect the physical education teacher to a club trainer because they do different things. But with the system that we built, we made an ecosystem that connects to each other. So our sports compass from 2007 to 2015, we tested approximately 20,000 children in primary schools. More than 2,000 in elite sports schools. In Flanders, we had 16 elite sports schools for different sports, also badminton. And we tried to find out which are the characteristics that you need in each of these sports. We made some statistical models and could allocate 97% of them in the right sports based on 16 simple tests. So it is a validated concept, and we used it also in the clubs. Now our Minister of Sport gave us a grant to use it in the primary schools, this sports compass, and this year we test 15,000 children. Next year 25,000, and in 2022 we will test 70,000 children, all the children in Flanders, and we will know if they are good movers or bad movers and which sports they could probably do. Not one sport, but different sports, because we believe also in a broad development of those children. And the thing is that there are differences. We all know that volleyball players and basketball players are the tall guys, and that the gymnasts are the small guys. So I never could be a very good basketball player. I liked the sport. And so there is a difference between liking something and being good at something. So what we did is we built it tools at the same time. One for every child, what do you like to play? And the other one is, where are you good at? And where are the characteristics that you're good at? So we try to find out what characteristics do you need in badminton. And for example, endurance shuttle run gives you an idea. You need a lot of endurance in triathlon, but also in badminton. So you see that there are differences. Gymnasts don't need that endurance. They need endurance in another way, but not in the way like triathletes and badminton players. And so with these tests, it's possible to put everybody into his own sport. The jumping sideways, as I told you, is also very important in badminton. We also had a motor test throwing shuttles. You know, me as a gymnast, I tried to throw a shuttle like this, but everybody knows that you have to have a very long arm here and that you have to give a very good swing. If you can do that at the age of 6, you don't have to learn them anymore how to do it. So that's easy. If you know that they can do it by themselves, then you have an advantage in badminton, in volleyball, in tennis, and the games or athletics where you have to throw javelin. So for all these things, we built also some benchmarks. And for example, a boy, 10 years old, who measures 135 centimeters and jumps 1 meter and 47 centimeters, what does this mean for a certain sport? For example, in fencing. In fencing, he's a little bit too small. He's under the 100%, which is the average in the middle of our graph there. And for the jump, he's under average as well. In gymnastics, he's good for his stature. He's small, so that's perfect. That's a very high score, but he doesn't jump that far enough. In triathlon, he's got probably a little bit too much fast twitch fibers, so it doesn't fit really in triathlon with the jump, and for stature he's average. In basketball, you can tell that he's almost worthless because it's very bad for both of the characteristics. And in badminton, is a bit under average. Now, we do this not only for those two characteristics, but we have 15 of them, and the combination of it makes that we can put you in the right sport and that we can profile you, which is very important that you have a profile. And if you see that everything is green, probably you will become a champion in judo or in volleyball, as I showed you before. We made a toolbox for the schools so that they can do those tests in the schools. We made an app so that they don't have to manage all this administration. And that's also our aim to do with the badminton federations and the judo federations. And in soccer, we give you all the access with apps, and we try to give you the tests that you need in your sport to make better identifications. The next point, I will give this to Tengku, because the good thing is that we work together and that we learn from each other. So she's got the opportunity in Kuala Lumpur to test the best badminton players, and I've got the chance to work in Ghent with the best researchers in the field of talent ID. So the connection of both of this makes it a system which can be sustainable in the next time.
Thank you, Johan. Yeah, it's my turn now. If I can actually recap the reason why I actually decided to collaborate with Johan. At the moment of time, I met Johan in 2014. He's just completed his PhD on Sports Compass. And the reason why I worked with him was Mr. Eli Macro. I just realized without looking at 7 keys to coaching, I actually applied the first and the second principles of coaching. The first was, I discovered that he had a standard of doing a talent identification in Belgium. And why Belgium? Because every country has its own talent identification protocols, am I right? It includes Malaysia as well. But what fascinates me is Belgium, with the 6 million population, managed to actually make sure they are competitively the top 10 for most of their sports. And that impressed me. If you have not been to Malaysia, Malaysia has about 32 million at the present moment. But we don't have that many hungry athletes to become champion. So I'm assuming, and I'm making an assimilation, that I'm as small as Belgium. I'm looking at my 32 million to be 6 million to find badminton champions. I grew up in the days where champions come from the Sidek brothers. If you are baby boomers like me, yeah, until the exit of Datuk Lee Chong Wei. So now there is a void. And the second one, Mr. McCaw, method. I believe in this talent identification, and I want to capitalize on the fact that University of Ghent actually tested this with 20,000 primary school children over how many years, which I'm not able to repeat it again. So it was actually a very nice marriage, and we are very thankful that Badminton Association of Malaysia was very keen and very supportive and very cooperative, and Badminton World Federation was very supportive with the research grant. So what we did was, we actually, if you don't know about Malaysians, the junior elites, we have elite school, sports elite schools. And as young as 12 years old get entry into the elite schools, but it's very exclusive. For the 12-year-old, we only admit 6 boys and 6 girls. Out of all those potentials, there are in Malaysia's 12-year-olds. So in 2016, what we did was, first and foremost, we actually asked Johan to come over, and we actually tested the testers, because there are series of batteries, yeah, testings in a battery that we need to actually execute. And we were very careful because Johan had these very strict protocols, and we need to make sure that we are accurate, and the way we measure is at par with what Johan is doing in European countries. So the quality control. So how do we do it? We actually trained 20 in 2016, 2017, and 20 in 2018. So we actually captured them while they do the test. I send the videos over to Ghent, and Ghent validated to say whether it's correct. Then after that, then we proceed with the data collection. So this is the same slides that Johan was saying. In Malaysia, 2 criteria for selection of players. One is the coach's eyes. Okay, there's a silent looking at your rank. If you're number 1, we cannot reject you. Second is actually the physical test, and this has been going on for many, many years. Yeah, it's the physical test, and it is a disadvantage for the late maturers. The talent selections comes with a deselection. And number 2, okay, what I believe in and what I saw, I was really concerned because when they get admitted at 12 years old, what happens was, we are beginning to see the trend after 2 years of following them, that there is a prevalence of injuries. And that is a concern for us, because we want them to last as long as possible in badminton. And, you know, we are capitalizing on the fact that we are actually testing on our junior players, so that, you know, the world of badminton will try and avoid this prevalence of injuries among your players, young players. So the talent development also, I'm not going to repeat that. Okay, so this is what actually will be generated. These are the junior elites on the 2016 and the 2019 that we actually, if you notice, it's 60-60 because it's 60 times 10, okay? 5, 5, 5, 5, right? So if you see on the left-hand side, you will see that it's all green, yeah? So these are the better players' potentials, but we do not know whether they are early maturers or the late maturers. this would not be someone that we select. But then again, TID, talent identification process, is not Tinder. You know, Tinder is a matchmaking thing. So you go into the system WhatsApp. I read on the internet that is the most popular apps for matchmaking. So it's not an app. TID is not a process where you, oh, I don't like this because he's not too handsome. I don't like this because he's not too tall. Yeah? We don't do that. Yeah? So we don't do that. We reject the one with more yellows, and we accept the one with them. Because when we select, at the back of our mind, as a researcher, we also deselect. And we might miss our potential champions because we select the early maturers. And that could be something that's happening. That's the reason why we are doing a longitudinal studies in this particular project, because we're beginning to see the trend. So then again, this is the thing. So what we do is there are three things that we see. One is anthropometry, yeah? And the other thing is actually the physical performance. As you can see, these are the tests that we did, sit up and blah, blah, blah. So you can see there's a mix. The greener they are, the better they are, okay? So remember I said about the physical performance. So majority of our players who were admitted were actually having more greens here. And then this one is the most important thing that we added on this past 2 years, was we actually looked at the motor competencies. Because motor competencies tells us about the potentials. But the physical performance tells us about the actual performance. And that's the reason why it could be, we cannot confirm right, it could be why some of the players do not last until past the age group. They don't last. We have around maybe about 50% or less mortality, experimental mortality, yeah? So if you look at this, okay, this is actually a comparison between the 12-year-old that was aspiring to go in and the 13-year-old that are already in the system. But you must also remember that in Malaysia, we have we've got Chong Wei's fan. Okay? As early as 7, they love Chong Wei, and they send their children to badminton clubs. They pay. So those people who get into exclusive clubs or they have coach, they become better movers. And when they go for the selection, naturally they will have a higher chances of actually being selected. So if you have a look at this is the 13-year-old, okay? If you look at the motor quotients, yes, this is among the highest. So the one that is not ranked are actually the 12-year-old that was aspiring to go in, okay? But if you rank it again, okay, you can have a look that, for example, okay, you look at the number 1 to number 6. They have been there for about a year. So the coaches must have done something right because their motor coordination was becoming a lot better. So they are top 6. But then number 7 are the aspiring 12-year-old, and you can see it's not doing too bad. But when we looked at the sprinting, you look at the reference boy, the 13-year-old boy, actually was outclassed by those people, those boys, who were actually aspiring to come in. Yeah? So if you have a look at when we actually run discriminant analysis, you can see some of them were selected and some of them were not selected. But you see, half of them were actually false positive. And half of them, some of them were actually false negative. The concern is we have too many false negatives. False negative could be the potential. And let me share with you, Chong Wei was just a sparring partner for Wong Chung Han then, for Kwan Yuk Ming then. He didn't realize his potential until there was a point when he became a champion and there was no stopping him to become number 1. He wasn't one of the people that was selected to be among the top. So he could have been here at the false negative. Okay? So what we want, you must remember, these 4 positive could be selected because they were stronger, because they were early maturers. Yeah, but then again, this could be the dropout because demotivation and could be because of injuries as well. So what we want is if you actually look at the motor test, when we run it again, you can actually see there are more false positive, but what is more important is we have lesser false negative. Lesser false negative meaning, in statistical language, meaning we do not deselect too many people. But of course, this is at just 2 years, so we need to continue taking because we need to have more subjects and more data. Okay? So when we actually do predictor model, okay, we actually found out using the artificial neural network, yeah, we found out very interesting things about the type of tests that are more salient and more pertinent and more important for badminton. But we need more subjects. So, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I believe in what I do because I want to help you coaches so that you will become more motivated. And if you could share this, and if you can become a believer in a new form of talent identification that includes motor coordination, we might be successful in making sure that there is a sustainability of younger players and less injuries among the younger players. Well, that's my portion, so I'm going to pass to Johan again.
Thank you. Okay, next slide is about biobanding, because now we saw that we have late maturers, we have early maturers, and we have to do something with them because some of them need another development. And what we see is that the early maturers have more advantages. They get some other roles, they have more playtime, they have specialized coaching because they are the 6 coming to the elite sports schools. So all those advantages help to make the system not what it should be. And we try to do something with the deselected as well. So we have another ranking now, and we rank them for the biobanding. And this column is very important because there you see numbers which are between 100% of the predicted stature of when they are going to be an adult, and the farther away you are, the more time you have to develop. So the group in orange is between 89% and 95% of their adult stature at the age of 12. The yellow group is between 85 and 89%, and under 85 is the gray group. Well, they have another kind of, they need another kind of development. That's what I'm going to explain now. Same in girls, and you see at the age of 12, you already have a lot of girls, 4 girls in this group that are almost full grown. So at the age of 12, they are early maturers and they need other development. So if you look at the talent pool of the 12-year-old boys, you don't really see differences between them. But if you rank them, for example, their performance in the sprint, the best one runs 1.05, and the worst is 1:34 seconds for a 5-meter sprint. If you have to do something with these numbers, it's very difficult. And the thing that you should do is probably you take the fastest guys, you put them together, and you take the slowest guys and you put them together. Well, that's a big mistake because you have to rank them by maturity. So if you know this, you see that some of them here in the orange group run under 1:10, and here in the yellow group as well. And even in this group, you have fast guys and slower guys, but their maturation is different. So they need something different. Between 89 and 95%, you have very high risks of injuries because they're in their growth spurt. So watch out and give time to them because there are a lot of structural changes in their body, and you should be aware of the risk of injuries in this group. So they need something different. Here in the other group, 85% to 89%, it's the first growth spurt, and there you have risks for injuries as well, a bit less, but there you can do something with neural adaptations because it can help your system and motor learning instead of doing a lot of power and strength training. So change it a little bit. And under 85%, well, there you can give them a broader development because they're still very young and the risk for injuries is a bit lower. So it's a complete other system and not based on the ranking of your physical performance, but based on your maturity level. And it's not too difficult to measure that. The only thing that you should know is how tall are you, what's your weight, how tall is your mom, and how tall is your dad. And that's it. And how old are you? And you put that in a computer, and you know that probably now you are 1.60 m for stature, that you will become 1.80 m, which means that it's 83% of your adult stature. So you're in the gray group. That's the thing where we work with. You don't have to measure all these things. Well, you have to measure it, but you don't have to calculate it because we built an app for this. I built the app for Tengku with my own computer because I like to do those kind of things. But now we have a prototype because we know that in the end everybody has to use the same thing and we have to translate it in different languages. So it's important to give an app such as we did for the schools, and we provide you the tests that you need. Well, detection in the first phase, orientation to know which is the sport that fits for you, and then the transfer could be possible. And transfer here in badminton, well, it's always a matter of being afraid because probably they will steal your best players to become squash players or tennis players. But now you have the opportunity in air badminton to change from one sport to another. It's the same sport, but it's a complete other setting, and maybe that will help in the transfer of the badminton for some of the children. But what we see is that in the schools, a physical education teacher tries to sample things. He teaches you everything, gymnastics, football, badminton, a lot of things. And in the club, it's only badminton. We would try to change that a little bit, and instead of only playing badminton and injuring your shoulder at the age of 12, maybe it's better to have a broad specialization with some other sports. And for the physical education teacher, maybe it's better to have a directed sampling to somewhat it fits for some children. We built a matrix, so this is statistics, and the interesting thing here is that normally you look in this way, and you see that if every light is green for badminton, you have a 100% fit profile for badminton. And table tennis and tennis, 93% of it connects to it. But much more important is this way of looking, the horizontal way, because in which sport can I find the characteristics which I can train in my sport? If you're not fast enough in badminton, you can train it in badminton. It's very interesting, but what you will do is you will still compensate your, what you miss, because probably in badminton you can react a bit faster, but you're not faster with your speed. So if you need speed, you have to take it from another sport, and you have to take the athlete and put him in another situation, and don't let him play badminton to make him better and faster, but let him be faster in something completely different. So there are similarities in racket sports. This is the study of Kamasha, and we see that, okay, almost everything connects to each other. If you put gymnastics here in this area, you will see that there are bigger differences. So what do we need in badminton? Well, it's obvious. Agile people, they have to be fast, they have to hit something very hard, they have to jump very high, and they need some balance. Those are the 5 characteristics which are very, very important. And the thing is that you can train it in completely other sports where you never thought about. So agility, you can find it in handball, in basketball, in karate, in netball, table tennis. So a different range of sports. This is interesting for the sampling years. Children 12 to 14 years old like to play, and you can keep them motivated not only by playing badminton. It's good that they play badminton, but you can keep them motivating by doing these things. For speed, you can find it in complete other sports: tennis, table tennis, karate, badminton, and so on. And hitting, baseball, volleyball, table tennis, hockey, tennis. So you see that there are possibilities to interact with other sports. Now, this is a video of the prototype of the app that we use, and it's the same as what we use in the schools. In the schools we use the I Do and the I Like, but here we have a talent badminton app. Oh, okay, it's still continuing, good. So we try to do a new test with them. We choose our test, balance beam and so on. Those are all the tests that we did with Badminton Malaysia. We select one, for example, the balance beam. We take one of the children. We have the protocol to be sure that we do it in the right way. We can put the results in the app, and after that you will see that the color is not orange anymore, but becomes green in the list. Okay, that means that he finished it. But if you look at the tests, so we did one of the 3 participants, so you have an overview of who you have to test. So for the curl-ups, we have the same procedure, but we have a chronometer. So you don't have to take all these things. You can do everything with your cell phone. You can put all your numbers in your cell phone at the same time. That makes the administration much more easier, and in the end, you are benchmarked with your group or with the world elite, if necessary, if they give their numbers, of course. That's another question. So every time you have your explanation of your test, you have your chronometer and the way you can use it. That is one app. So we're specialized in making those apps in our school. And another one is that for the development of some skills, we have inspiring videos for the coaches. So here we make a selection, and we try to find a skill, or we try to train it. So we show you some, we give you some ideas. And the nice thing is, this platform is for free. Doesn't cost any money. The only thing you have to do is you have to look at it, find your own videos, and maybe upload some other videos to help your colleagues to do the things with you. If you use it for one special occasion, for example, Badminton Malaysia would like to use this only for his her trainers, then it will cost something, because at that time we have to close it from the others. But the complete video sets are free and available, and we are making this bigger and bigger. So we're going to end with take-home messages. First of all, minimize talent loss. So be aware of where you can lose your talent. And change your selection system into a development system. So instead of selecting, try to keep them all in as long as possible. We have some other examples of that in football in Belgium. That was the success of the Belgian soccer team, and I will explain that during the break. Enlarge your talent pool and implement motor tests in all your clubs. That's also very important. So work with futures pool. That's what we did with the soccer in Belgium. Avoid your deselection of late maturers and apply biobanding, and provide a follow-up program and prevent injuries. So the follow-up program is very important as well, and that's why we have these inspiring videos to give you some other clues. That was our story. Thank you for your attention, and we are
Open for
glad
questions.
to hear your questions.
Many thanks for that presentation. We've got time
you.
for a couple of quick questions, if anybody would like to ask anything.
Johan.
I've actually got one that I've been asked to ask, so someone's too shy to ask the question themselves. What's the early stage you've actually started the testing with?
For 12-year-old actually. For 12-year-olds.
And Johan, was that different in gymnastics? Was it earlier
Oh
in
yes,
gymnastics?
yes, it's different because you have late specialization sports and early specialization sports. So gymnastics, at the age of 7, you already have coaches who think that they have a world champion in their team. And I think here with badminton it's 12 where they start to select, but they start earlier with badminton, but they select
They
at 12.
didn't actually screen the way we screen.
Yeah.
They only screen at 12 because there's a system that they can be admitted to.
So there could be an advantage actually in doing it
It
before.
would have been an advantage if they start at 7.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem is that we saw that if you start at 7 and you think that you have all these gymnasts who are high potentials, I told you about the 756 that we tested. 5 years later, when they were 12, the 85% of them disappeared. So they fell out. Dropout is 85% rate. And what we see now with what happened in Malaysia with the group that we tested is that from the group 12 years old, that already some of them disappeared. So if you only select 6 high potentials and the next year you lose 2 of them, what will happen in 3 years? Probably the complete system will have new players. That's not a good system. You should start with guys where you believe in and that continue, who are motivated, well trained, developed, and so on. So the problem of the survival in sport and the dropout in sport is very, very big.
Yeah. Actually, what happened was the previous talent identification did not consider maturity. So we understood, Malina, the researcher that is very much into maturity, had mentioned that for girls, they reach their peak maturity from 12 to 14. Yeah? And for the guys, it's 14 to 16. But the admission is at 12. So when the girls actually come in at 12, they haven't actually got used to their new body. Yeah, their new body. And for the guys, it's actually, we've got to wait until 16. So until they reach the peak 14 for girls and for 16 for guys, you can actually, you cannot confirm their potential, their real potentials. They are not stable yet. So this is when, perhaps, you know, when we actually get a few more years, we can actually confirm that we may not need to admit them at the age of 12. We may need to wait until 15, then we can admit them into the system. And then we can broaden the pool, like what I said, broaden the pool. Instead of having 6, we could have 8 or 10. Then what's more important is that they can survive and they can pass and be absorbed in the senior team.
And that would also address some of the injury issues as well.
Exactly, exactly. Because currently the growth spurt phase is not being addressed. Yeah, because we didn't consider the peak height velocity. That's the most vulnerable at 85 to 90. Yeah, 85 to 90. That's the time when if you get a very good coach and they can actually train your motor ability very well, you will get high motor quotients for your players.
That's great. Many thanks for that. If I could just invite David back onto stage to give a small memento. That's great. Can we do it in the middle before we get the backdrop?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Terrific job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really one of the best investment that we have done in BWF.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's take a picture.
Yeah, picture, yeah.
Just in the center.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good on it.